Hello, everybody, and welcome to the webinar. This is a Summer 14 developer preview. We are going to be talking about some of the cool new features and highlighting some of the neat things that you can do with the Summer 14 release that is coming up. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Joshua Birk. I'm a developer evangelist here at Salesforce.com, and you can catch me on Twitter at Josh Birk. And I am joined today by two rockstar guest stars. First up, I have Kari Hotchkiss, who's a senior quality engineer with our Canvas team. Kari, why don't you give everybody a shout out?
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm the quality engineer for Canvas, and I'll be showing some of the new features that we have coming out in Summer 14.
Beautiful. And you can catch Kari on Twitter at Kari Hotchkiss. And then to my left, not that you guys can actually see that out there in webinar land, but to my left is Mr. Skip Sauls, Director of Product Management. And for today's purposes, the most important part is that Director of Visualforce. Isn't that right, Skip?
That's right. Thanks, Josh. And I'll be showing you guys some new features in PDF and also for mode objects today.
Excellent. And you can catch Skip at Skip Sauls on Twitter, which makes this is actually the first webinar that I've done where all Twitter handles of all of the speakers are first name, last name combinations. So you have no excuses. Very easy to go out there and follow us on Twitter. All right, it would not be a Salesforce presentation without the safe harbor slide. Basically, this just says that if you're going to make any purchasing decisions, please make them based on current features and not any future-looking statements that myself, Kari, or Skip might make. Now, since this is a developer preview webinar, there's a really good chance we're going to be saying a lot of future-looking statements. And in fact, we could probably just consider this entire webinar to be under safe harbor. So most of what we're talking about today is not current features. And you can catch us on your favorite social media channel of choice. Our official Twitter account is at Salesforce Devs. Now this is relatively recent. If you are still following the old Twitter account of at Developerforce, you need to go over to Twitter and start following the new one, at Salesforce Devs. And if you'd like to give us a shout out during this webinar, you can use the hashtag ForceWebinar. We also have a Facebook page, a LinkedIn group, a YouTube channel, and a Google Plus circle. And finally, we are recording this webinar today. Usually about a week after we get it done, we will have it up on developer.salesforce.com, so you can check for it there, and you can also keep an eye on your inbox. Now, if you have any questions today, you don't have to wait till the end of the webinar to get your answers. Go to the Q&A, the questions panel over in GoToWebinar. You can put your questions in there. We have some excellent panelists on the line today who will try to answer your questions in real time. And then they will also be passing those questions over to Kari, Skip, and myself for a Q&A session towards the end of this webinar. So we should have about 10 to 15 minutes towards the end to go through your questions. And if there really is something that you're stuck on that we didn't get a chance to talk about, you always should be heading over to the developer forums at developer.salesforce.com/forums. It's a great place to get your questions answered. Here we do this little event here in San Francisco called Dreamforce that you might have heard of. It is the cloud computing conference that you do not want to miss. This year it's going to be October 13th through 16th, once again in Moscone Center here in San Francisco. And for our developers, we've got a little bit of love out there for you. We've got an $8.99 developer discount. And if you go to bit.ly/dfweb14 and remember this little discount code, we can get you in at a slightly reduced price. All right, our agenda today is really pretty simple. We are talking about updates, 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 updates. I am going to start with a few things that are changing for our Salesforce One application. I will then be handing it over to Kari, who's going to be walking through some of the cool new stuff with Canvas. Then I'm going to take it back and talk about a few things that are being added into Apex, and then finally I'm going to hand it back over to Skip, who is going to show us some cool new stuff when it comes to Visualforce. So with that, let's get rolling. The first thing I want to talk about is a few updates that we are going to be doing to Salesforce One. Now, this is mostly talking, what I'm really talking about today is really the Salesforce One mobile application, the one that you can download for iOS and Android or in your mobile browser. And one of the cool new things we're doing this release is that actions are no longer tied to chatter. Now, actions are these little microtransactions that we can either put in globally in the application or we can attach specifically to records. And they really evolved out of chatter. So with chatter, what we did is we added this new feature called publisher actions. And these were custom actions that you could add into the chatter feed itself. And then from the publisher actions, we got the global actions and we got the record actions. And so because of that evolution, they've always been kind of tied to chatter. But with Summer 14, we're going to be breaking that knot. And if you don't have chatter enabled in your org for whatever reason, you will still be able to use these custom actions in the mobile application on your records and globally. The only things that you just won't see the chatter actions like post, file, link, pull, and thanks. Another cool little feature gap that we are closing is end-to-end approvals in Salesforce 1 itself. Now, currently, you were actually able to approve records, but the Submit for Approval button would not appear on layouts. With Summer 14, if you put in an approval and you attach it to a record and you put the Submit for Approval on a page layout, it will show up in the mobile interface. And the nice thing is, if you go through the mobile interface and you submit a record for approval, the person who is going to be approving that will actually see that show up in the notification tray. So they'll get a little notification tray icon. They can click on that, and they can go right to the record and approve or deny that right from their mobile phone. So we've got end-to-end approvals in Salesforce 1 now right from your mobile device. And as a bit of a segue, another one of the big changes that we've got with Salesforce 1 is this ability to put Canvas in more and interesting locations, more specifically in the page layouts for the record details themselves, and also on the mobile cards for your record detail. But instead of talking about this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand things over to Kari, who is going to talk about that as well as our other Canvas updates.
Great, thanks, Josh. In the Summer 14 release, the Canvas team continued to focus on adding flexibility and allowing you to add Canvas to many different places. In the previous release, the only way to get a Canvas app displayed on a record detail page was to embed it into a Visualforce page and then add that page to the layout. Now this works fine, and it gives the developer the ability to do a lot of customization, and you can pass parameters, add UI around the Canvas app, etc. However, it's going to add a little bit of UI overhead. Since the Visualforce page on an object layout is contained within an iframe, and the Canvas app is also contained within an iframe, you have a dual iframe situation there. You can still do it this way. We've left that functionality there, but now you also have the ability to add the Canvas app as a standalone layout item, so you can just drag it onto the layout without having to use a Visualforce page. We've expanded the amount of information that can be included in a sign request. You can now specify record information by including fields from the object where the Canvas app is displayed. Your Canvas app can then use that information to make UI changes, do any kind of logic based on those fields. And there are a couple ways you can do this. You can either add it to the Visualforce component if you're still using a Visualforce page, or if you're just using a Canvas app standalone on the layout, we've added this concept of an Apex Lifecycle handler, so you can add that information there. Now, an Apex Lifecycle handler is just an Apex class that you can add onto a Canvas app, and it's going to give you some flexibility to override a lot of the default behavior of the Canvas app, and it's just an Apex class. It's going to implement the Canvas Lifecycle handler, and you're going to override two methods, exclude content types and onRender. This class is going to run before the app renders, so you can change what's sent in the sign request, you can inspect the information that's in the sign request already, and make decisions based on that. One other thing that we've added is the ability to change the default URL based on whatever you want, really. The only restriction that we put on that is that it needs to be within the same domain. So you can set it to a different path. It just needs to be in the same domain and port number for security reasons. This lifecycle handler is also where you would add parameters or add record fields. It's a way to set parameters if you're not using a Visualforce page. I'll show you a quick demo here. I have to warn you, I had an unfortunate run-in with some demo gods today. And a little bit of my demo is not looking as nicely as I'd like it to, but I should be able to get all the functionality that we have added in Summer 14. So here's my Canvas app. Again, it's just a Spring app. It's using a Postgres database, and it's running completely on Heroku, completely outside of Salesforce right now. We've added it as a Canvas app, and so it'll display inside this demo org. Now you can build the demo org and this Canvas app as per the tutorials in the workbook section on developer.salesforce.com. So we've added it as a Visualforce page into the Warehouse app. Here's the Visualforce page that I've added it to. And you can see here that I'm using the order ID as a parameter. So what this app is going to do is it's going to display on the invoice statement page, take the ID from the invoice statement, send that to the Canvas app, and then the Canvas app is going to use the ID to display a little bit more information about what's happening with that invoice. At least that's what it's supposed to do. In this case, my Canvas app has been a little disrupted today, so right now it's just displaying on the page without any extra information. We'll wait for it to load here. With Summer 14, we've added again the ability to just drag the Canvas app onto the page on the layout. So to do that, you go to the invoice statement layout, edit the layout, and we've added this section to the layout editor called Canvas Apps. Now, any Canvas app that has a location of mobile layouts or mobile cards will appear here, and then you can just drag it on. I'm just going to drag it onto this order section right next to the old Visualforce page and save it. You can see I have two Canvas apps here. One is within a Visualforce page and one is not. Now the way that we would get the Canvas app to display the correct invoice without passing in the invoice ID as a parameter is through the record object. I'll show you the code for that. Here's my code for the Canvas app. This is the order page. I've coded the post method here. And you can see that we're checking parameters right here. If they exist, we're going to go ahead and use the invoice ID that's passed in through the Visualforce page in this case. If we don't see the parameters, we're going to use the record. Now the record is an object that's been added to the environment object in Canvas sign requests. So you can now take a look at this record object, and it's always going to contain the ID field. Since all records will have an ID, you can always count on there being an ID there. You can also add record fields based on the object type. So not all records will have the same fields, as you know. Probably they'll have a name, but not necessarily an address, so you can add those extra fields based on where you're expecting the app to be displayed. If you do want to add more fields, we're going to use the Canvas Lifecycle handler. Now, like I said before, it's just an Apex page, and so you develop these in the same place where you develop any Apex page, or any Apex class. In this case, my class is called the Apex Handler. Let's take a look at that code. Again, it's implementing the Canvas Lifecycle Handler class. And it's overriding two methods, exclude content types and onRender. Exclude content types is a place where you can take out pieces of the context. Say you're not using the organization object at all. My code isn't. So I can take out every bit of that and make the sign request a lot smaller. That's going to decrease the size of your payload, and it can improve your performance. There's also the onRender method. Here. This is going to run before the app renders. And this is a good place where you can take a look at what's already in the context. You can make decisions based on what's in the context. So you can take a look at the location, change the URL based on that if you wanted to. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and set the URL path to the home page. Because I'm having problems with my app, I'm going to go ahead and change the URL here and just have it go to the home page for now until I can get it worked out. You'd also add parameters here. And you can also add entity fields. This is where you'd add extra fields for the record that you're expecting to be on. Okay. You save that. And you go to the app. Edit it. We've added a new field way at the bottom here called Lifecycle class. Here's where I will add my Apex handler class. Save that. When I go back to my invoice statement and take a look at what's being displayed, I'm getting a different view here. This is the home page for my Canvas app, and it'll give it it's a way to change the URL. We've added a few things for mobile as well. Just like you can put a Canvas app directly on a page layout, you can also now drag it onto the mobile card. This is one of the second or third pages of your record detail in a mobile app. The restriction that we've put here is that you can only use it either in the page layout or in the mobile card. You wouldn't want them in both places because then you have duplicates on the record, and that would look kind of funny. So we have restricted it so you can only add it to one or the other place. We've always had events. In summer 14, we've added an orientation event. So you can rotate your device and your app can pick up that event and you can make UI decisions based on that. In spring 13, also we didn't have the ability to add your own logo in the app section. We've added that in summer 14. You can either use your own logo or the default logo is a puzzle piece. Take a quick look at that. Salesforce Mobile, here's my invoice statement. To add it to the mobile layout, I'm going to take a look at the invoice layout again. I'm going to remove it from the record detail, and then I'm going to drag it onto the mobile card instead. So we'll take this, pop it right there, save it. Again, it's no longer on here. This is my Visualforce page. And we'll take a look at it in mobile. And here is my Canvas app. It's very important to notice that this first page here is just a preview. So if you've got anything clickable, you're going to want to probably remove that of your preview page. When you click on this, it'll bring you to the full Canvas app view. So anything that looks clickable, say a button, is actually not going to do what you expect it to do, since this entire section here takes you to the Canvas app itself. The way that we're doing that is we've added a new field called the sublocation. And this will tell you if you are in a mobile card preview or a mobile card full view. It's on the environment object right here. This is again my code for my Canvas app. I'm taking a look at the sublocation, and then I'm passing it into where I get the order page. We go down to get orders page. You can see that I take a look at the sublocation. If it's equal to mobile card preview, I send it to a different view. If it's equal to mobile card full view, I send it to here, to mobile card full view. Mobile card full view has a Canvas orientation event. Using the Canvas orientation event is similar to using any other event in Canvas. You subscribe to it, you pass in the name of the event, canvas.orientation, and you give it the function that you want it to run when the event's received. We look at on orientation here. I'm taking a look at the payload.orientation. In this case, I'm just displaying it. You can do whatever you'd like here. This is where you would change the view based on the new screen size. One important thing to note, this is just for the mobile client, not the native client. The events are a little bit different for the native client, and so that is out of scope for this release. One of the last things that we've added in this release is the user-approved sign request app. In the past, if you wanted to use a sign request app, your admin needed to pre-approve profiles and permission sets before the user could even see it. In this release, we're adding the ability to do all users may self-authorize, and this will allow the app to kick into an OAuth flow every time the first time a user sees it, and have the user approve it themselves. And then every time, this will give them the user a refresh token, and every time after that, they'll see the normal view. The way that we're doing that is by sending a GET request to your app, and it's got a parameter attached to it, so you can tell that it's coming from Salesforce and that the user needs authorization. Once the app has been authorized, we send a post request, just like any other sign request app, and so you'll see it normally. And the code for that looks like this. We've already coded the post right here. We just need to code the GET. We're looking for the _SFTC_canvas_auth parameter. If we find it, then we're going to return the user approval view instead of the normal view. The user approval view has a section for kicking off the OAuth flow. It's just our standard Canvas OAuth flow. But we're also using the repost here. The repost is a function that we've added in Summer 14. If you send it with a true, you're going to get a new sign request, and it's going to refresh the Canvas app. Just the Canvas app, not the rest of the page. And the way to set that up you go to Manage Apps, Connected Apps, and you set the OAuth policy to all users may self-authorize. Save it. We're also going to need to make sure that we remove the Apex class that we had on there, because that's sending it to a different page. Now when I go take a look at my app, it's going to ask me to first approve this app. It'll kick me into the OAuth flow. I'll allow it, and if I had it set up correctly, this would refresh to the proper view, but for some reason I've changed the flow a little bit and it's not getting to where I need it to go. So that's what happens with demos. But that is how you do that. So with that, I will hand it back to Josh, and he can continue on.
Excellent. Thank you, Kari. And we always know that it is a live demonstration when things aren't quite as they are planned, but that is excellent stuff. Very glad to see it. Also, personally, I just find it like every single release, right? Like Canvas gets a little bit more love. We close some of these feature gaps, and the developers just get a lot more flexibility. So it's great to see that continuing with Summer 14. I'm sure we're going to see some more awesome stuff coming out in winter as well. All right, so let's keep going. Now, Kari mentioned a few new things that we're doing with Apex specific to Canvas when it comes to that nifty new lifecycle interface that we have. But what I want to talk about is more about Apex itself. Now, these are two new features that we're rolling out, and both of these are in pilot. And since it is in pilot, what that means is that you're not going to see this unless you actually contact us. So you need to give us a case or talk to somebody here at Salesforce in order to get it enabled, even when you have a pre-release org. Now, the first one is something called Flex Queues, and Flex Queues is going to give developers a lot more flexibility when it comes to controlling their batch jobs. Currently, what we have is a limitation of 5 active jobs that can be set to a queue, And what a flex queue is going to do is give us a totally different bucket, which allows us to add up to 100 batch jobs into that bucket, and they're going to be set into a holding status. And then as citizen resources become available, we'll pull them out of that holding status, and we'll put them into the active queue for you. Now, very quickly, if you're listening to me and you're scratching your head when I'm using the word batch, and what do I mean by a batch process? Batch is an interface we've had in Apex for some time, and when you implement the batchable interface, that allows you to override these three methods that we're seeing here, and the one that does all the real work is execute. So what's going to happen is we keep throwing records at execute, generally that match a SOCL query. This is going to run in the background and allows us to process a large section of data asynchronously in the background. So a classic use case for something like batchable would be like garbage collection. Let's say you have accounts and you want to run something every day that's going to take every account that's over 90 days with a status of closed, and it's just going to go ahead and delete that. You could run that in batchable. It'll run the background process of your org. And once you have that up and running, if you have the pilot enabled, the way you're going to see this enabled is you're going to go to setup and you're going to go down to jobs and you're going to see the Apex Flex queue added to the job section. And from that interface, you can see all of the batch processes that are going to be put into holding status, and you can also change the priority. So if there's some that you want to be pulled out of the Flex queue more than others, you can change the priority of those from this interface here. Now, another thing we have coming up in pilot mode is custom feature limits. This is, again, giving developers a little bit more flexibility with what they can do in Apex itself. Now, again, this is also specifically talking about processing that's going to be occurring asynchronously in the background. So when we give an Apex method the @feature annotation, what that really means is that we are saying, go ahead and process this, but I'm not going to wait necessarily for your results. And so the method can keep going, and it can have its own. It's one way to actually already sort of get around some of the government limits. Now we're pushing that even more by allowing you to decide how much of those government limits you want to take on. So here's a good example. This is actually a subsection from the release note. So this is not all of the future limits that you can enhance. This is just a few of them. For all of them, go to the release notes themselves. But the way it works is we basically continue the annotation @future, and then within the parentheses, we are going to describe the limits that we want to double or triple. So for instance, if I used @future limits equal 3 times SOCL, that's going to give you 300 or 600 SOCL queries for that round of Apex processing, as opposed to the normal 200. So we're giving developers a little bit more flexibility, and in code, it's going to look just the way you would expect it to. Just add the annotation, add the custom limits to the annotation itself, and then when that runs, you're going to see those greater limitations, those greater government limits being applied to your processing. Once again, this is in pilot, so you're not going to see it enabled right away. So if you want to play around with this in a pre-release org, you're going to have to let us know. Okay, so after a very brief tour of Apex, I want to go over to the cousin of Apex, our user interface library, Visualforce. And I'm going to hand things over to Skip. And Skip, I think you're going to start by talking about remote objects, which we released in the last release in spring as a developer preview. And it's staying in developer preview in summer, partially because of some of the cool new stuff that you're going to show us, right?
Exactly. Thanks, Josh. So I've got a few slides to show you to talk about some of the updates, and then we'll actually look at some of the demos and some of the code. And then I'll cover a couple of other new features that we have. So first up, we're enhancing it with the features you see listed here. Geolocation support. You can actually add a location to any of your objects inside of SFDC. And this gives you a way to get them back directly without having to write additional code, so it makes it much simpler. We've added a convenience for upsert, so that instead of calling update or create based upon whether it's a new or existing object, you can just call upsert and we'll do the right thing based upon if the record exists already. Order by, exactly as it sounds. You can change the sort order for queries, so you have more programmability on the client side. And then for the where conditions, some new operators, not equal to, less than or equal to, and greater than or equal to. So again, you can do more on the client side without having to go to the server. Now, for things that you want to change on the server side, you can now use the remote method overrides and override the CRUD operations with Apex. So instead of writing an entirely custom controller, you can just override the methods that you prefer and then call the default one. So you could do additional processing, inject other data, filter the data, and that sort of thing. So let's look a little bit at some code samples, and I'll show you the actual running code here in a moment in a sort of a demo that you may be familiar with from the mobile pack. So this is based on a contact editor using jQuery mobile and some other toolkits to basically build it up. So what I've done in this is enhanced it with the geolocation fields, and you can see here now the location longitude and location latitude. And apologize for formatting that. I just realized that's not quite lined up correctly. Or you can just still use location. So you would get back an object which has .longitude and .latitude as fields on that object. It depends on how you want to work with it. And I did it this way just for the sample. And in the JavaScript code itself, you get back latitude and longitude here directly from the record that's being returned. So if that object has that on it, you get those values. In this case, we're passing those in directly to a standard Google Maps API. And again, you could use other mapping APIs that also support the same basic lat-long feature. The upsert operation lets you either update a contact in this case or create a new one. Basically, does it have an ID or not? If it doesn't, it'll create a new one for you and return back the ID as well as the created object. Or you can just use it for update. So it's just a little convenience function there. The order by and where conditions, you can specify these inside the calls here. So in this case, we're getting back a set of contacts, and we're ordering it by first name and last name with ascending sort. And then we're doing a sort of contrived filter saying if the name, first name is not equal to Andy, return it. So Andy's getting filtered in this case. And again, this is just to kind of show off for the demo. Remote method overrides. In this case, we've got the contact override controller here specified for the page. Then we get to the remote object model, and you can see here where we actually are overriding the retrieve method here. It's the second line of the code in blue. And we're calling this remote action called retrieve on the contact override controller. Inside of the contact override controller itself, I've got this at remote action F annotation. And in this case, I'm overriding just retrieve here. So I don't have to write an entire custom controller. And I could take this and add additional fields. I could filter it in some way. Basically, do whatever you want to change the data to suit your application, again, without running completely custom controllers. Okay, let's go to the demo real quick here. And there we go. So again, you might be familiar with this from other samples you've seen. This is actually from our mobile packs, in this case for jQuery. Let's just go ahead and reload the page here. So this populates it using the remote object APIs. It's mostly written in HTML markup and some JavaScript. I'll show you the code for that here directly in the editor. And if you click on, for example, Arthur's song here, you can see the map that pops up here. So again, we've added the geolocation data. Let's go ahead and bring up the console. I'm going to open the developer console, and I'll show you some of the actual code in place as we walk through it. Resize that a bit. So this is my contact editor .vfp, which is Visualforce page. You can also edit this using the footer. You can edit in other inline tools. You can edit with an IDE. I'm just using the developer console in this case. And again, we see our contact override controller here. Let's go a little further down here. We see the remote object declarations we talked about with the location, longitude, and latitude. And if you haven't seen remote objects before, in the JS shorthand, this is where you can specify what you want to call that object. So when you get it back from the record, you can reference it directly. And then the rest of this code is directly from the original. I just updated a few places where they've got the query. In this case, the sorting and so forth. And again, we'll just make a simple change. We'll make this to Arthur, save it, and let's go back and refresh the page here. And now when we get our list back, oops, let's get back here. We now see Andy, but we don't see Arthur. So we've changed the sort order there, and changed the filtering rather. And again, that's kind of a contrived example just to kind of show you what's possible there. And certainly you can experiment with this and try things out, but the goal is to limit the need to go and write custom Apex for a lot of the standard cases. And then again, further down, I just downloaded the map piece for jQuery for Google Maps that somebody had already written a wrapper for Salesforce. And when we get back the object, we're calling this draw map, and we're getting back the longitude, latitude, and basically plotting it. So just standard Google Maps code, nothing really particular there. And one of the goals of remote objects is to make it very easy for you to use third-party libraries, for JavaScript in particular. We're showing you here jQuery Mobile. Certainly, there's more modern toolkits for things like Angular and Ember. There's the Mustache library. So there's a lot of different things you can use. And the goal is to make it wide open so that you don't feel like you have to do everything just using the basic Visualforce pages. You can do it with almost any toolkit you can imagine. And do it in a way so that you're not having to write a bunch of low-level code to get to it. Now let's go back to the slide deck and show you a couple of quick slides for something I think you're going to find exciting, which is the Visualforce new PDF pilot. And by new PDF, I'll show you exactly what this means. We have a asynchronous service to generate PDFs now. This means that we've taken it off running inside of the app server, making it non-blocking and much more scalable. So there's some exciting possibilities for people doing batch processing of PDFs or generating things to send out to customers. It is very accurate because it's based on WebKit, the same thing that underpins a lot of the browsers, in particular Chrome and Safari. So you get all the correct CSS, JavaScript images, and I'll show you some examples of that. We fully support Unicode, and we support the right to left languages. Now with that being said, let's go and do a demo of that. And what I'll show you is a couple different editors here, or a couple different pages. So this is the chart page. This is a standard demo, just testing out some of the charting facility. And in this case, it's rendering as a VF page. So if I put in a legacy PDF, it's just a version I've got. Instead of changing that attribute on there, let's just do the quick version for the demo. This is what you get in our original PDF engine. Again, you don't get very much. You get basically the title, you don't get any of the graphics, and that sort of thing. So this has been a frustrating experience for a lot of customers who want to generate more complex PDFs. They were left doing very bare bones things because of the support there. So let's check out the new PDF feature. In this case, it actually has submitted the page to this remote service. It's doing the rendering as if it was a web page and returning back to you a much more accurate PDF rendering. And you'll see here now we get all the charts just like we would expect in there, but this is actually a PDF you can then download, email to someone, send to them, and that sort of thing. I'll show you a similar example. Let's go to a test page. And this is just a kind of a contrived example to show off various fonts, various languages. And at the bottom here, you have an HTML5 canvas app, not to be confused with the Salesforce canvas that's rendering this sort of spirograph type graphic on here. Now, if you go to our existing PDF, if you say render as PDF, let's go to legacy here. We'll get this sort of view here. So things don't size correctly. You lose a lot of the margins. You lose almost all the languages there. A lot of the fonts, famous Comic Sans is gone. And the canvas just renders as this big gray box. So again, you have very little control over an accurate PDF. But if you change this now to the new PDF, this will actually, again, submit it to the service, and you'll get back a very accurate representation, including all the custom fonts, all the custom CSS, and importantly, things like custom graphics, as we can see here now in the spirograph. So it renders it as is. Now, that being said, if you have a canvas-based game or something where there's animations and that sort of thing, I'm not sure you're going to get really an accurate representation. It'll be whatever the snapshot was when it loaded it. But the point being is you can now do very complex pages using the service. With that, I'll turn it back over to Josh, and I want to thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Skip. Let me flip back the slides, but first of all, if you're listening to the sound of my voice and I sound familiar to you, and you've heard virtually any of my presentations in the last 6 to 8 months or so, you probably know that remote objects is a feature which is pretty near and dear to my heart. So it's awesome to see the new feature set that we are adding onto that. And I actually want to thank Skip because he was the one who brought the new PDF engine to my attention that actually kind of lost my focus. Now, I will say that an old PDF engine that removes Comic Sans may be a good feature, but it's nice to see all of the neat new stuff that the new PDF engine is going to be able to do. A couple other very small notes that we are updating to Visualforce. One is API versioning for sforce.1. sforce.1 is a JavaScript library that we inject into the Salesforce 1 mobile interface, and it basically makes it easier for developers to write navigation inside the application itself. And so if you're already using sforce.1, I would highly recommend checking this out in the release notes. What this will basically do is it'll give you a little bit more safety, because if you write to one version of the API and then we start changing sforce.1 on you, we will not be breaking your code. So a very nice stability feature for our developers out here. And then the second one, kind of like the PDF engine, I really like features that as a developer I don't actually have to do any work to get the benefit of them. And this is one of those. We are going to start optimizing the Salesforce CSS and JavaScript. So if you have a Visualforce page which is already using the standard style sheets, it uses header equals true, standard style sheets equals true, then you're going to already see some benefit with Summer 14, because we're going to start optimizing those files for you. We've gotten some feedback from developers that those files can be pretty hefty. There's a decent number of them, so we're going to slim those down to you before we deliver them to your pages. So with no effort on your part, you should be seeing those Visualforce pages increase their speed. And a couple other notes. One, updated governor limits in general. Our describe limits have been removed for Apex within Summer 14. So we can take describe calls within Apex, so we can get the fields for S objects, the field list for S objects, pick lists, etc. And you can do that to your heart's content at this point. And finally, this one, the Developer Edition API limits. You know, these release webinars, we try to find features which demo really well for you guys, the stuff that Kari was showing you, the stuff that Skip was showing you, to really get you kind of excited about these new features. But then there's one like this that there's no real great demo for it, but this is honestly one of my favorite things about Summer 14. We are giving Developer Edition a triple-fold increase to their API limits. It's going from 5,000 to 15,000. So if you have participated in like a hackathon or a UG meeting where you are just really coding like crazy against your Developer Edition, maybe from a mobile application or a third-party application on Heroku that's accessing these APIs, you probably have run into where that 24 limit might have smacked you on the forehead. 15,000 is going to be a much higher ceiling for our developers, and so the Developer Edition is going to give us a lot more flexibility for that. And also, quick note on some things that are moving to GA. Chatter files, REST API, the ability to sync files out from Chatter itself. Our suggested queries REST API, which gives you concepts of what you might be looking for, the analytics dashboards API, as well as workflows ability to deal with multiple records and fields. These are all moving to generally available with Summer 14. Okay, so let's wrap up a little bit. The first thing I want to do is I want to talk about some of the key resources that we have out there. Obviously, the first one that you are going to want to remember is developer.salesforce.com, our one-stop shop for developing on the Salesforce 1 platform. And if you want to go to highlights from Summer 14, and actually if you go to developer.salesforce.com/releases, you will always be going to the last release, so we've got information out there. So right now, Summer 14, you'll get a little bit more information and text about some of the features that we're talking about. And then finally, if you'd like to sign up for a pre-release org so that you can actually start tinkering around with these features yourselves, I've set up this handy little bit.ly link down here, bit.ly/summer14prerel, and go ahead and sign up for one of these, and you can see some of the stuff that we're showing you here today. So your next steps, I would recommend going ahead and grabbing one of those pre-release orgs, and then from developer.salesforce.com itself, go to releases, and you can download the full release notes, which is always a great idea, even after a web. And finally, if you are, you hopefully already have one of these, but I always like to give a shout out to our free developer environments. Once again, our DE orgs are free. We are not going to ask for your credit card. We're not going to bug you for marketing. We're not going to try and sell you anything like that. Go to developer.salesforce.com/join. If you have not already gotten the DE org, rush right now and go ahead and grab one of those. And I'd also like to give a shout out for some more information for you. So we also have webcasts coming next week for the release Readiness Live. And so this is a wider, broader look at Summer 14. And as you can see here, there are topics set up like Sales Cloud, the Salesforce One mobile application, Service Cloud, Chatter, etc. So our product managers will be getting on the horn for you and doing a little webcast June 17th and June 18th. So keep an eye out for those dates, and if you want to register, you can go to bit.ly/summer release readiness and get even more Summer 14 love. All right. We do take your feedback very seriously with these events, positive, negative, neutral, anything that you want to tell us about how well you thought we did today. We iterate these events frequently, and we use your feedback as the tool to figure out how we should be changing stuff down the future. So if you go to bit.ly/summer14 webinar, you'll be taken to a feedback survey form to let us know how we did.